and welcome back to the How to Podcast series. I have a fellow Canadian podcaster who gets paid to podcast. Oh my gosh, I'm so jealous. He gets to travel around and talk to businesses and check to see if they're open, and they still are. He also gets to talk to people who are named Kenny, who like to deliver the mail. He does a lot of different podcasts, and which is great, and he's on the show. He also has a Discord group for us Canadians. Sorry, Americans. For us Canadians, and it's just for us to hang out and chat podcasting. And we're going to meet the nicest people in the world there. I just joined, so hopefully I don't sour the group, but Al is here on the podcast. Al, welcome to the How to Podcast series as my guest co-host. So happy to have another Canadian podcaster with me. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you, David, for having me on. Yes, the podcast Discord server, the Canadian podcast Discord server, welcome to that as well. And we're trying to build a nice community there.
Excellent. How long has the Discord group been around?
I think I started building it sometime in January of this, early this year. I was getting a little frustrated because I joined the Podcast Academy, and they had this kind of messaging area that you can kind of quote unquote communicate and network with other podcasters. And it was so Web 1.0, like it was so frustrating to use. I'm like, there's got to be a place where we can commune, where we can, network and discuss issues that are important to Canadian podcasters in particular. It's such an insular thing that we do here, right?
Yeah.
Like we're all almost antisocial when it comes to what we do. We sit in our studios in our basement and record and put our words out there. But yeah, I started, kind of putting the feelers out. Does any, who's interested in getting a place where we can kind of get together? And there are places like Yammer and stuff, I guess, where this sort of thing could happen. Facebook groups, I'm sure. But Discord's such a great tool for this, for community building. I mean, I use Discord for my own produce stand podcast, the Letterkenny podcast you'd mentioned, and it's thriving. There's people on it all the time, and so I thought, why not try that with the for Canadian podcasters as well? And so far, so good. I think we're almost at 100 members. A little Ontario heavy right now, but I would love to see members from across the country.
So we're going out to a Pod Summit convention thing in September, my wife and I. We're going to be promoting the Discord server, obviously, and everybody coming to join the Canadians there. What's the whole idea for you, Al, around building community around podcasting? We talk to people that we don't meet. We see listens on our stats, but we don't ever get to talk to them. Why is building community so important for you?
Well, so, I mean, first of all, just if you have a podcast, one of the easiest and best ways to grow your podcast is to build a community around it. It's what we did with the produce stand, and we have a thriving community of people who are always on there and always networking. And so whenever we put out an episode, they're on top of it. They're listening to it right away. We get a lot of feedback right away on the episodes so that we can improve on it. We get a lot of help recruiting people to interview and stuff. So the community becomes almost like a producer on your own podcast if you do it right. Right now, the Canadian podcaster Discord community, that's more of a place where, I mean, especially the last few years, there's been a lot of talk over bills, that the government are passing that are going to affect us as podcasters. And again, we're all kind of sitting in our own studios, in our own homes across this really big country and feeling maybe powerless over what how to shape these bills or whatever, right? Or at least have these conversations. So having a place where we can get together and say, hey, what do you think about this? And what does this really mean? And so on and so forth. I think it's a really interesting, important venue for that. Now we have John and Jen from the Canadian Podcast Awards are also on that Discord. In fact, we're kind of teaming up now because they were going to build something like this, and they're like, well, Al, you already started it, so we might as well just get together and do this. But I mean, they have, they've shared resources and connections for people to go and see what's going on so that we're not in the dark on this. And maybe we have a say ahead of time before policy gets made and stuff like that. So I don't want to call it a union. It's not a union. It's just a place where we can kind of talk, share ideas, and maybe if there's enough of us, we can inform decisions
Yeah.
that will affect us down the road.
It doesn't feel so alone then by knowing there's other people there. Yeah. So for you, your produce stand podcast, I love the show. For those people who don't know who Letterkenny is, this TV series, it kind of feels like Rush, the Tragically Hip, Bare Naked Ladies, where in some U.S. states, they get it. Tim Hortons, they get it. Some places have no idea what we're talking about. So for those who don't know Letterkenny, and will because of your podcast and watching the show, it's a great companion podcast for the show. You have like stars on from the show. You get to get into the details of the show. I love it. For those who haven't seen Letterkenny yet, can you get us introduce the show to us for somebody in the States, for example?
Letterkenny's a sitcom created by Jared Kiso, who's a former hockey player turned actor who went down into the U.S. to have a career in acting. Hated the politics down in L.A. and Hollywood, and came back here and decided he would do it up here. He started off with these YouTube shorts called Letterkenny Problems, and basically Letterkenny is this fictional Ontario town based on the town he's from, which is Listowel, Ontario. And it's got a very distinct flavor and a very distinct look and sound to it that you mentioned, people from different parts of the U.S. Well, the majority of our listeners are Good. American. It's a very universal theme and feel because it's about small towns, and small towns everywhere kind of have the same issues, the same problems, the same factions, right? It's funny because I know that they tried franchising Letterkenny to other countries. There was actually an attempt at doing a Norway version of Letterkenny, Norwegian. I always have a hard time saying that word. And it's instead of hockey players or soccer players, but there's still Hicks and there's still Skids and there's still like these different factions and how they get along with each other. And it's just in a different language. So anyway, it's pretty universal. The show itself blew up as far as Canadian shows that don't have a home on network television. I think it might have been the first ever Canadian production that was meant for digital first only, because it's on Crave. It's always been developed and produced for Crave. I don't think it ever had a home, nor could it on network television, because the language in it, you just wouldn't be able to do it. But legend has it that it grew among the kind of the allied nations, because what would happen was Canadian soldiers would get these home care packages that would have things to help them get over homesickness, and part of that would be like a USB key with a bunch of Canadian television on it, whether it be corner gas or whatever. I don't even know if they even have hockey games on there, but whatever they would. But one of the things they had on it was this show called Letterkenny. And apparently the Canadian soldiers watched it, loved it. But then once they were done, they would share it with the American soldiers and with the Australian soldiers and the UK soldiers. So they would all share their programs. So we have a lot of listeners in the US, a lot of listeners in Australia, a lot of listeners in the UK, and a big portion of our listeners are former military. Lots of like educators too. For some reason, lots of librarians. It's funny because on the surface, it looks like a very dumb show, very dumb, lowbrow show. But most of the people I know who love it are very intelligent people and very, they get it. And so it's an acquired taste. And there's no other way to put it. It's just an acquired taste. You either love it or you hate it.
Okay. And now you've been able to reach out through the show to the cast. What was like that for you to get one of those, the main cast members on the show? When they said yes, what, were you doing like a happy dance? Like what happened?
Well, it was a little surreal. Like this is a pandemic project when we started. So we started in 2020, July 2020. Actually, we're going to hit 4 years this week, I think. And at first we were just doing it because I'm a musician and I was looking for a creative outlet at the time during these lockdowns. There were no bars open, so I couldn't play anywhere. I needed an outlet. And I'm like, well, I've always wanted to do a podcast, so why not try that? And then I started looking for, well, what would the subject of the podcast be? And I arrived on this idea of an after show and I was looking for an underserved show, something that maybe had a bit of a cult following, but maybe not a lot of coverage. And Letterkenny kind of ticked off all those boxes. There was like another Letterkenny podcast out in Seattle. There was one in Toronto that started but kind of quit after a few episodes. So there was a bit of an opening there for us to creep in. So we started doing that, and we started growing a bit. And then we got lucky. We got through some Twitter exchanges, we got Patrick McNeil, who plays, if you're familiar with the show, he's one of the silent skids. He's a guy with his nickname is the Vape Lord. He's the guy with the gas mask who's always smoking up. But anyway, he doesn't say anything, but he's also the actor. Patrick McNeil is also part of the crew. He's a crew member. So acting is only like secondary, like he's mostly on the crew. And we were chatting and say, hey, would you like to come on the podcast? And he said, sure, why not? And so we had him on. And so that was a relatively easy get, because it wasn't like there weren't a lot of people clamoring, I don't think, to have him on. But he was great. He was gracious. He gave us a bunch of time. And it's also something we weren't thinking of. Oh, we're going to be this interview podcast. We just figured we'd talk about the show or whatever. But after having him on, this became a possibility. Like, oh, maybe we can. And so we dared to dream, and we dared. So I started, I got an IMDb Pro account, and I started looking up agents and contacting people and saying, hey, can we have so and so on? And yeah, like I think our second guest might have been one of the main characters, K. Trevor Wilson, who plays Squirrely Dan. I think he was the second guy we got on the podcast on the strength of having Patrick McNeil on. He was great. And then after that, we just, it was the slowest moving snowball, but it gained momentum. And after a while, I think like we would have people on and be like, yes, we're aware of your podcast. And so they're happy to come on. But the biggest coup was this past November. Jared Kiesel, the creator of the show, who doesn't do any media, any interviews. Like in the beginning of Letterkenny, he did some, interviews on CBC and Q and W5 and all that stuff. But after that, he was like, did nothing. He did zero press. And we always said, we'd love to have him on. And we were kind of told that maybe one day he'd come on, like once the show was done, he'd come on, but he's a very private person. And he sent us like a thank you package because he appreciated all the work we'd done and stuff like that. We got like a bunch of swag and a bottle of Dom Perignon right there. Yep. Like he, he's very thankful for what we were appreciative of what we were doing. But at the same time, it was always something where he'll never come on until one day I got a call from the producers saying, Jared's ready to come on. And we're like, what now?
wait,
what are you talking about? But it was because they were about to announce that season 12, which just aired in December, is the final season. So true to his word, he said, yeah, we'll come on and talk about it. So he did. And what a coup for that, because we were the only media outlet at all. Like he didn't do any TV, anything. It was just our podcast. So we got quoted in different places like Variety Magazine. Anytime people had quotes of Jared Kiesel talking about the end of Letterkenny, it came from us because we're the only ones who talked to him about it. So yeah, it was really cool. And I mean, the man's a prince. Like he's now spun it off into a new show called Shoresy. New show. It's in the third season, but we've been invited up to Sudbury. We've recorded on set. We've recorded our podcast on the kitchen set and in the Shoresy locker room set. We've been extras in scenes for Shoresy. Like they're amazing. I think they appreciate the work we've put into it, and in turn shown us their appreciation by giving us some really cool access. So,
wow. All because of a podcast.
All because one day I got bored and like, we need to do a podcast. Yeah.
So if that doesn't inspire you to create a podcast, I don't know what's going to. That's amazing. It's great. And so beyond this is your hobby fun podcast. You do, to talk about a show you love. You also get paid to podcast. Now, this is not like, I'm not saying you get ads from a company who buys time on your podcast. No. You actually work for a company and you are their podcaster. Now
Yeah.
I am,
Yeah.
again, like I said at the beginning, super jealous. But how
Yes.
did this happen?
Uh, Great question. So I'm a professional podcaster now. And how did that happen? What happened was I worked for a good company with an amazing leader who saw, so up until 2020, I was in corporate training. I developed online training. So all those like online courses that everyone quote unquote loved to take. Yeah, I built those. Um, and so I started Moneris in 2015. And at the time, I know I was doing a bunch of different things, and I was very experimental, and they liked that about me. And one of the things I started incorporating in the training I was building was podcasting, but internal podcasting. Just these were podcasts that were available internally through the company intranet site, and it was just 3 minutes every couple of weeks talking about all the different training opportunities and stuff. It was just another form of communication. So that got somebody's attention in our marketing department, and when they were thinking about, because one of the things that, if you're into podcasting now, you've probably heard of the concept of a branded podcast. Like more and more corporations are putting out branded podcasts. I mean, David, I looked at your website. I think you produce a bunch uh, for companies. Um, so when Moneris was thinking about doing that, like creating Moneris branded podcasts, they reached out to me, and they asked me, um, you know, about this, and I thought they were asking me because they wanted me to maybe refer them to an agency or something. I'm connected with Toronto Mike. He's a good buddy of mine. He's actually my podcasting mentor. But no, they were like, no, actually, we were thinking you could do it. And I'm like, what do you mean me? Like, I've never, like, up until, I don't think I'd started the Letterkenny podcast yet. So podcasting was only something I listened to a lot of podcasts. I've been listening to podcasts since maybe 2004, 2005. And I always wanted to produce one, but never had the idea up until the pandemic. So when they asked me about it, I'm like, I'd love to. And I have a background in audio engineering too. So I have the skills to build, to create them. I just, never thought about doing that myself until they said, well, why don't you, would you like to produce them? I'm like, sure. Why not? You're going to pay me to do that. So I basically moved from, um, HR, like training HR into marketing, and a couple of years ago, and I've been there ever since. And yeah, I've been producing 2 podcasts for Moneris. Yes, We Are Open and Just Good Business, and Yes, We Are Open is award winning. Just Good Business is award nominated, so it's going well.
Excellent. Take us through those 2 shows too, so we can tell people what they're about.
Sure. Well, I was asked to do up a strategy for Moneris, like what kind of because no one's going to listen to a podcast that's just an advertisement for the company. That's just an ad. So it needed to be entertaining or educational, or ideally both. And so they asked me to kind of whip up a strategy, and I did. I said, okay, I'm thinking of 2 shows. One, every company wants thought leadership. Moneris is the #1 payment processor in Canada. We should be leading all those conversations when it comes to payment transactions, fintech. Basically, we should be among the leaders in that area, in the thought leadership. So that's Just Good Business. So that's a monthly magazine where I interview leaders and like our different partners in the payment, in business in general. And I put out a monthly podcast talking about whatever it is that month, according to a theme. This past month, we did a sales themed episode. So how do you hire a good sales team? And I tied it into the Olympics. So it was Olympic themed. So the folks that I interviewed are actual Olympians that work at Moneris. And we had a bit of a chat on why, what part of them being elite athletes made them good salespeople. So a bit of a creative, bent on that. So that's Just Good Business once a month. And then Yes, We Are Open. I kind of stole the idea from CBC is Still Standing. And I wanted to, our customers are other small businesses, and I wanted to tell their stories. I wanted it to be a storytelling podcast because that I think would be interesting to, like, I love listening to storytelling podcasts, whether it's The Moth, This American Life, those kinds of things. Right. And starting a small business, being an entrepreneur, those stories are actually really interesting and really motivational, right? So I wanted to tell those stories, and I wanted to do it across the country because we are a Canadian company. So I pitched this, and I crossed my fingers and said I want to go to different places in Canada, interview small business owners, and tell their story. I braced myself, thinking, oh, good luck. But they're like, that's a great idea. Let's do it. So, I've been doing that now for the last few years. This coming fall, I'll be visiting Manitoba, and that'll be the last of the 10 provinces. I'll have hit every single province, and hopefully I'll hit the territories next, and then start all over again and hit the provinces a second time. But it's been great. I've been able to travel the country. Up until a few years ago, I'd never been west of Ontario. I'd been east before, but never west. And now I've hit every province, and it's been a lot of fun.
All again, there's like the theme with you, all because of a podcast. These opportunities coming before you. So going back to your first recording ever as a podcaster to today, how is Al different? Like, how are you growing? What changes are you seeing in yourself?
Well, I hope I'm getting better at it. You learn, you make mistakes, you learn from mistakes, right? And you keep going. Yeah. And I hope I'm more comfortable at it too, right? Especially with my interviewing skills. It's as an interviewer, you would probably, admit that, when you first started, you might not have been the greatest at it, right? And I'm the same. And I'm still, working on it. I'm still getting better at it. And especially when interviewing somebody who maybe I look up to, like some of these actors from the shows that I love, it's nervous time, and you get your one shot, and you don't want to blow it, right? So you learn how to, you learn how to have those checklists up front, because you don't want to make dumb mistakes and screw up that one opportunity to capture that interview.
How about the Canadian podcast scene? What are you seeing through the Discord group? What are you seeing in your travels? I really want to see the Canadian podcaster community grow through your Discord group, obviously, but in numbers, and encourage more Canadian podcasters to get on the mic. When I look at my stats, I see heavily leaning US stats, not so much as far as listenership in Canada. How do we grow podcasting in Canada?
Yeah, it's a tough one, because you're right. Like when you install a podcatcher, I use Pocket Casts, and you do a search, it's going to be heavily weighed to the podcast with the most downloads, and those are invariably going to be US, just through sheer numbers, right? So we need a better way for discovery, and I think some of it is supporting each other, promoting each other. Like there's some great newsletters that I subscribe to. One by Katie Lauer, and oh man, I'm blanking on her.
Is that the one?
Yeah, Pod the North. That's it. Yeah, Pod the North. Matt Kundle has the Sound Off newsletter. There's a bunch of newsletters, a bunch of other podcasts that champion Canadian podcasts, but we need to get better at kind of boosting each other up. And that's another reason for the Discord server, right? It's to get people in there. There's a channel there for guest exchanges, and I think that's how we get the word out, because in my opinion, quality wise, we're cranking out the same quality, if not better, than other places. But because our numbers are so small, it's funny. I was just at a podcast conference during Canadian Music Week here in Toronto, and we had somebody up from LA, and I'm blanking on his name right now, but he was talking about monetizing podcasts and all that stuff, and his agency helps with that. And the numbers he was talking, basically, the air was knocked out of the room because they were so huge. And he's like, we don't promote podcasts that have fewer than these numbers or whatever, right? But he's talking from an American, like basically a factor of 10, right? So you got to divide everything by 10 if you want to be, on the same playing field. Of course, that doesn't work when you're trying to attract advertisers. So there needs to be a different mindset up here, I think. And I think the mindset is local and hyper local, and that's the way you do it. Like There was also a lot of talk during that conference. I think her name is Erin Trafford. She's starting a network of hyper local podcasts because she believes that's the way to do it up here. And I don't disagree, because Toronto Mike's been doing that for 10 years now. His podcast has 7 different sponsors, and they're all, there's a funeral home, a pizzeria, or not, sorry. Oh boy, not a pizzeria, a pasta place, a beer, a local beer, a brewery. So all of his sponsors are hyper local, but he's Toronto Mike. So like, even though he's got listeners probably across the country, maybe even in the US or whatever, he focuses on his area, and he is able to get sponsors from that area. And of course they see value in it, or else they wouldn't be sponsoring him. I mean, Great Lakes Brewery has been his sponsor now for, I think, his longest serving sponsor. It's been worth it to them, or else they wouldn't be doing it. Right. So there's money there. There's business to be made as a podcaster in this country. You just got to stop looking at Joe Rogan and thinking that's how you're going to do it. You got to do it Toronto Mike style, not Joe Rogan style. And that means basically, all that money that used to be put into local radio, local advertising, all those ads that used to go into Now magazine, all that advertising money's got to go somewhere. It's no longer in print. Where is it? Yeah. You got to find it, and you got to, show your value. And that's how I think you get it.
And that's what Moneris is just demonstrating with their podcast, right? Is that money we could put on a billboard or a bus bench, but let's just pay Al to get our voice out there. And that's evergreen content, and it puts the focus on our customers, which is a smart thing to do.
And more big corporations are looking to podcasting as an additional channel in their marketing strategy. So I think that's just going to grow. That venue is going to grow. So if you are an aspiring podcaster, it's a possibility there. Like, it's funny. I joke about coming out of college, the last 2 jobs I've had didn't exist when I was in high school. So when I was in high school and people, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be an e-learning developer and a podcaster. What the hell are those things? Back in 1994, neither one of those things existed, right? Now they do, right? And when I came out of college and with my audio engineering background, thinking I was going to become a music producer and audio engineer, and of course, then everything went digital, and suddenly all these massive studios became these soundboards on my desk here, and no one needs a producer or engineer anymore. I pivoted and got into multimedia production, and that's when I got into e-learning and all that stuff. And at the time, I started seeing the trend that more and more corporations needed like this kind of training. So now I'm seeing that same trend now, but with podcasting, with branded podcasting. Now you might make the argument that would suck the fun out of it, right? If somebody's podcasting about something, it's something they're passionate about or have an interest in. I agree that doing a corporate podcast might suck the fun out of it. But if it pays the bills, and if you enjoy it, or if you have an aptitude for it, or if you have a talent for it, sometimes you got to do the dry stuff, and so that you can have your fun on weekends and stuff. Right?
You're getting paid to get better in podcasting. At the end of the day, you're growing, right?
Yeah. Yes. 100%. And exactly. They're paying for me to get better at it. And who knows, one day maybe I'll get that dream job. I don't know, producing for, I don't even know what a dream job in podcasting would be, right? Producing for the CBC. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. You did mention before we hit record that you came across in your travels a bar that has a podcast location built in.
That's really cool.
I'd love to shout them out too here, and we're going to go check them out when we go out west in the fall. But tell us about this place.
Yeah, so season 6 of Yes We Were Open, I went to Alberta, and I visited a bunch of small businesses in Alberta, and one of them was this really cool bar. Now, I've since learned that there were a couple of similar places in Toronto, but this is the first time I'd ever been to one of these. So they're called Kaks Bar and Podcast, and it's Kaks. Check them out, Sean and Cass. They're the owners, and they're a couple of really cool guys. And it's a really cool bar with elevated bar food, they'd call it. And then in one corner, they've got this glassed off area, and it's a podcast studio. And basically, they record their own podcasts out of there, but they also offer the services of the room for anyone who maybe doesn't have a home studio like you and I do, but want to do a podcast. They can go there, and I think it's $1 a minute. So if you record an hour-long podcast, it'll cost you $60, and what you get is an MP3 file and a video file, and you can then take it home, do with it what you will. Or if you want to pay a little extra for some post-production, they'll offer those services too. And as I was interviewing them, they were only open about a year, and they'd already had about 60 different podcasts record out of there. So they're doing all right, like in terms of making this hobby of theirs also part of their business, right? So it's a really cool place. So I recommend anyone who is in the Calgary area, especially during the festival, when in August,
September 20th to the 21st. Yeah,
September. Anyone going to that in September in Alberta, they should check it out and tell them Al from Moneras sent you, and see how they treat you.
That's good. Yeah, like I said, we're going to get kicked out because they're like, that guy is never allowed back here again, didn't pay his tab, or they're going to welcome us with open arms. So one of the two things is going to happen. Find out when you get there. Okay.
You go try the stuffed hot dog.
The stuffed hot dog. See,
it's got cheese in it, and anyway, it's
now I'm hungry.
Yeah.
So for you, what else are you seeing in podcasting? I love to encourage a podcaster that's listening, contemplating starting a show, continuing with their show. Any kind of words of encouragement from a podcaster in the space?
I mean, you just have to keep on going, and know that every time you hit record and post something, you've learned something. You're getting better each time. I've published couple of hundred episodes of Letterkenny, and I've published another couple of maybe 150 episodes roughly of podcasts for Moneras, and I'm still learning new things. I'm still learning how to do it better. There's also different ways to do it, right? And when you start off, there's no right way. So whenever somebody's like looking for the perfect, don't try to start with perfection, or else you'll never get it off the ground. Just kind of start, and then get better at it, and be good with that, because even the most seasoned podcaster is still learning things.
How do you think, in general terms, without getting into Moneras' business, how do you think they're maintaining and monitoring the return on investment of having you do a podcast for them? Are they seeing a result for them as a business? Are they growing? Because I'm thinking another business is going to hear this and go, hang on, we've never thought about this. I have a marketing team sitting there in the corner looking bored. They have nothing to do. Maybe a podcast is a good idea for us to consider based on what Moneras is doing.
So this is part of the new world of sales that I wasn't in before. I'm not a sales guy, but because it's part of the marketing and sales arm of Moneras, there's this thing called and this is very basic stuff. I'm sure anyone who's into sales, when they hear me talk about this, will be like, yeah, of course, you're an idiot. But anyway, I've learned about this thing called the sales funnel, right? And at the top, there's like awareness. In the middle, there's engagement. And the bottom is when you close that sale. Podcasting for Moneras hovers over the top of that funnel, where thought leadership and awareness. Don't kid yourself if you think you're going to convert sales with a podcast. You're probably not. It depends on what you're selling, but you're probably not. But your hope is when somebody thinks about payment processing, the first name that comes to mind should be Moneras, right? If somebody's thinking about, starting a small business and where do I go for, advice, Moneras should be maybe one of the first things that pop into your mind. That's part of the thought leadership play, and that's being top of the funnel or above the funnel, actually. The Yes, We Are Open, that's more kind of us, putting a spotlight on our merchants. That's kind of more of a retention thing. First of all, the merchants who've been featured on the podcast, hopefully they're appreciative, because it didn't cost them anything. And now they're on this podcast that A, is award winning, B, goes out across the nation. So people in Ontario are learning about Kaks Podcast and Bar. And
it works.
Right? Yeah. But it's also, there's some ancillary benefits. For example, people who have joined the company, and I hear this from my former colleagues in HR, they'll say, they'll be asked, here's some material so you can learn more about Moneras. And they'll say, oh, I already know all about Moneras because I listened to your podcast. So there's a bit of that. what we measure is impressions, and like the measurable stuff are impressions and downloads, and it helps too when we win an award here and there, right? To prove that the podcast is doing what it's supposed to be doing, and that's raising awareness towards Moneris as a company that you might want to consider for payment processing. But again, in terms of converting, and we have had like one or two businesses reach out going, how do we get on Yes, We Are Open? And then I'll respond saying, love to have you on as long as you're a Moneris merchant. And then they'll be like, oh, I'm not. Maybe they will become one. Who knows? But I have no metrics whether those conversions happen. But I have had those interactions with different people, right? So, yeah. So that's the value of creating a show that is appealing not to just business owners and entrepreneurs, but it's appealing because it's a storytelling podcast, and now more people are hearing it. And more people that hear it, Moneris becomes top of mind. Like, I don't mention Moneris too much on Yes, We Are Open. There's like a 30-second ad in the middle of it. That's a Moneris ad. But other than that, I do ask a question to merchants saying, has Moneris helped you through your trying times? Because we talk about struggle and stuff. But if the answer is they haven't, because it's just business as usual, then that's fine. We don't mention it. But if they do say, oh yeah, they were great help during the pandemic and we needed to, have contactless payments and they set us up really quickly, that's happened. And so we want to, talk about that, right? But it's never about Moneris. That one there's all about our merchants.
And all about the story behind the merchants, right?
Yeah,
so it's not about, exactly. Oh, Moneris has a new color keypad. It's now red, not green. Ooh, no. Our dashboard is now purple. Well, okay. Yeah. As a listener, that's the episode? Like,
yeah. No. Yeah, who's going to listen to that? Yeah, no.
But the stories are what brings people in. I love that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Where do you go from here, Al? Like, you got these 3 podcasts. You're doing the podcast thing. What's kind of like down the road for you? What are you looking forward to?
I mean, I don't know how you do it. Like, you produce how, like 8, 10? Yeah. 8. I mean, I'm my hands are full with 3. I'm happy with 3. Again, I really want to expand Yes, We Are Open, because in the beginning, the first few seasons of Yes, We Are Open, people didn't know us very well. So it was a little tough to get, businesses to participate. So I'm hoping my second time through the country, I'll get more stories and more interesting stories, and I'll be able to, tell more stories. Just Good Business. I just want to keep on making that a better show, and like this past episode that we did for July around sales. I'm not a sales guy, but I had a round table with like elite athletes talking about sales, and I loved it. It turned out amazingly because the content was perfect. It was, and for our intended listener, which would be like a small business owner or an entrepreneur, I think it provided some really great insight and really great, strategy and tips for those people. Right. I want to, build on that. And then obviously the Letterkenny podcast. I mean, I can't, we've already kind of gotten our white whale. So now it's just kind of continue doing great interviews and telling, doing our recaps and ratings, and see where it takes us, see what other, what else the show can send us. Like they're doing a charity hockey game in November where the cast of Shoresy are going to be playing Maple Leaf alumni. Wendell Clark's going to be there and stuff. And we get to attend as VIP guests. So we get to meet not only the Shoresy cast, which we've already met them all in person anyway, but we'll also get to meet some, legendary Maple Leaf players. So nothing wrong with that.
Are you going to branch out into a specific Shoresy podcast, or are you going to keep it all under one banner for now?
I branded it the Produce Stand on purpose so that it wasn't just tied to Letterkenny, but we are kind of loosely tied to Jared Kiso. Like, we have this saying, in Jared we trust. So whatever he creates, we're going to follow because he's been good to us and we've been good to him, and we like the stuff that he creates. So we're going to keep doing that.
Jared we trust. I love that. That's good. As far as following your shows and connecting with you, Al, and the Discord server, all that information we're going to put in the show notes. Where do we send people to be in touch with you?
Well, you can it's funny. It's ever since Twitter kind of went all crazy and stuff, I've started rebuilding my blog again, which I'm kicking myself. Why I stopped blogging? Like, I was a blogger from, way back when. and I got rid of it. Social media took over, and the new shiny toy, right? And now, like, I'm scrambling, like, man, I need a place where I can put all my stuff on again. It's like something like a website, maybe a blog. So I'm rebuilding the blog, alangrego.com, and that's where you can find all three of the podcasts I produce, but also, musings and stuff that I write here and there. But that's the best place to find everything. And then Protestant Pod, at Protestant Pod is for the Letterkenny podcast on all the socials. Moneris is just moneris.com. And yeah.
Beautiful. I'll put all the links in the show notes, and we're going to check out that bar, obviously. And also put links up for Toronto Mike as well for people to go check out his stuff. And
absolutely.
Al, thank you so much for doing this, taking time out of your day to do this. And you're in a place that I love, and up near north of Toronto, which is amazing. So every time I'll go through there, I'll wave in a general direction. Hopefully you'll see me. So
I'll be out in your area near the end of this month. We're heading out to our first powwow out near Simcoe, nice. Ontario. Good. Yeah. Never been to one before, but we've been invited by one of our listeners from the Letterkenny podcast to attend a powwow. So, and apparently one of the bigger ones in the country happened near Simcoe, Ontario.
Amazing. Well, that'll be awesome to be a part of that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Al, thank you so much for taking time to be on the show.
Thank you. You too.
Hey, thanks for being here at the end of the podcast. This is just for you because you're still here. Thank you for your support for the podcast. Thank you for listening to the show, sharing it with other podcasters. Maybe somebody you know is thinking about starting a show. I would love for you to say, hey, wait. You should go check out the How to Podcast series. It's got everything you need. And Dave as well is included. You get one free Dave with the How to Podcast series. I'm included with it. So kind of a bundle thing you get. To that point, mentioning it in the podcast, definitely want to remind you here at the end, there's a link in the show notes. Starting it this summer, I'm working through this. It's a way for us, you and I, to have a conversation around podcasting. I want to help you. And I've been doing this for people who listen to the show now for almost 3 years. And I just haven't been promoting it as a thing. So I'm now promoting it as a thing. I want to spend time with you. I kind of would love to hear your voice. We're going to jump on Zoom together. We're going to talk about your podcast. You get time one-on-one with me, 30 minutes in my calendar, completely free, no strings attached. You don't have to buy a blender or a vacuum or none of that stuff. No. Just us. I just like to help you. And whether you're thinking about starting a show or you have a show, you want to grow your show, whatever it is, I'd love to meet you, talk about your struggles, your questions, work together. And I am eventually developing this into more of a coaching program for podcasters. But I'm starting with my best friends first, for free. So if you're interested, you listen to the show, and I appreciate you, link in the show notes. Let's get together and talk podcasting, okay? You and me, let's talk. Let's talk soon. See you. Thanks.